Hello friends, this is just a quick video on what I did today in one of my classes in Spanish. So I was teaching um, some basic errors that students make in sentence formations in Spanish. You know, errors like wrong use of prepositions or wrong use of tenses of the verbs, or basic errors like ser or estar, or using the gerundio when probably it's not required. So, I was just thinking that a lot of these errors that happen in classes happen because, or in sentence formations, happen because students tend to think in English when we are trying to make sentences in Spanish. And so I told my students that you need to think in Spanish. So one of the students asked me, how do we think in Spanish? And that sort of really started uh, me, or began to think a little bit more about it, because yeah, it's a very important question to know as to how do we think in Spanish, or how do we think in any other language. um, so one thing is to learn a language, the other thing is to think in the language. So I believe, and I strongly urge my students as well, that we need to read a lot more. Reading is something that is slowly but surely going out of fashion. Very few people these days read a lot, and in terms of learning a language, you need to read a lot more. Because when you read, and from my experience of reading novels, reading short stories, you tend to internalize a lot of things, and that somehow, somewhere in your brain, they get stored, and you tend to think like that. Then a point comes when you see a sentence, or when you hear a sentence, you can just naturally feel uh, that the sound of it is not quite there, or it just doesn't sound right, is what we say. And that happens because we have internalized a lot of things in Spanish, because we have read a lot. So when I say that think in Spanish, it is about really uh, speaking in the language, thinking in that situation in Spanish. So a lot of the times you need to um, every day develop this habit of trying to describe things that are going on around you in Spanish, describing people, describing objects, describing your experiences in Spanish. And it's an overall package of learning, of reading, of listening, or of viewing things in Spanish, that is very important. And it's important to think what you are going to write in Spanish by imagining the sentence in Spanish rather than in English. That is what it means to think in the language. I don't know whether you guys agree or not, but if you do not agree, if you have another point of view of how to think in Spanish means, or how does it look like, what does it really mean to think in Spanish when the teacher says, I guess if you have something in mind, please do let me know in the comment section.